So picture this, you, yes, the person watching this, you just died. But before going into the afterlife, you see this right in front of you. What do you pick? Where are you gonna go? Who knows? What we do know is no matter what you pick, you are cooked. And that's why we're making this video. We're going to find out what is the best option to go with and how to survive both. But this isn't going to be easy. Look to your left. You have to deal with Nemesis, Mr. X, and Patient Zero. But looking to your right, you're going to have to deal with Pyramid Head, Manifestations, Maria, a whole lot of stuff. So now you're thinking,
I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
but how about this? Before you choose, let's lay out some ground rules. If you go to your left with Raccoon City, you are a STARS operative with mid-game jail loot, which will be the following items. You get a pistol, a shotgun, and a grenade launcher. But if you decide to go through Silent Hill, you do take on James's guilt. Not only do you take on his guilt, but you will get the chainsaw and a pistol, which would be explained later. As always, if y'all have any recommendations for us, leave a comment down below. And maybe you'll learn something new about either Raccoon City or Silent Hill. I'll be covering Raccoon City and Hermes will be covering Silent Hill, so without further ado, let's get into it. As stated before, there are 3 major enemies in Raccoon City, that being Nemesis, Mr. X, and Patient Zero. And of course, we can't forget about the zombies. And since you are a STARS operative with Jill's loot, Nemesis will be aggravated towards you. When you hear the name Nemesis, you know something bad's already about to happen. But unlike all the other tyrants, this bioweapon doesn't just hunt you, he learns from you and stalks you. Which is why we get scenes like this.
You gotta get out of there right now!
Alright, let me grab my...
You see, the thing is about Nemesis, he's a tyrant similar to Mr. X, except he has a parasite that basically replaces his brain, just giving him the ability to think more behind his attacks, the reason he's smarter. This is why we see Nemesis wield weapons while Mr. X is kinda just punching Leon around.
Holy shit!
And also, not to forget, these tyrants also have a healing factor. So the only way you can kill these things is if you're able to do more damage to its body faster than it can heal. That's why we see when Mr. X dies, half his body was exploded and he doesn't get back up from that. And when Nemesis was defeated, he was shot with a railgun, eliminating more than half his body. And physically, these tyrants are crazy strong. Like when Carlos shot a rocket at Nemesis, he just straight up caught it. Let's get a little technical here and find out how crazy this is. So the average rocket is 4.4 pounds, multiplied by the velocity of the average rocket being 985 feet a second. Now let's say he caught it as soon as it was being fired. We'll then divide the momentum change by time, in this case being 134 divided by 0.01, giving us 13,400 pounds of force, which would be approximately 100 times stronger than the strongest human. Not only putting him in superhuman strength, but also superhuman reaction speed. You know, ignoring what happened like 5 seconds after this. And also, this dude is crazy fast too. But now let's take a look at Mr. X. What's tricky about Mr. X is that there's not just one of them, there's 2 of them. As we see in Claire's storyline, he gets killed by Patient Zero, and in Leon's, he gets blown up. Also, just keep in mind that Patient Zero did this with like 1 attack. But getting back to Mr. X, he's really strong. We see that he's able to take bullets and also is able to punch through walls. But not having the parasite makes him a lot less intelligent. In fact, the only thing that Nemesis and Mr. X have in common is actually just they're really strong. As we see, Mr. X doesn't really move that fast, but he makes up for his speed and strength and durability. As we see, he's effortlessly able to grab Leon and Claire. Not only that, he was able to push this truck off of him and even tank a whole bunch of explosions. So now that moves us to our last and final person, that person being William Birkin. As stated earlier, he was able to rip Mr. X in half and has also shown superhuman strength as he was able to hold back this crate. He's also easily the most agile out of the 3. Like, let's just look at when he was fighting Claire in the final boss fight. And even after that fight, he still came back. In fact, he actually came back even stronger. But now this begs the question, how do you exactly survive this? The first thing that you want to make sure is that you don't want to get any of their clothes damaged, as the more that their clothes get damaged, the stronger that they get. We see with not only Nemesis, but also Mr. X. And then damaging William too much would end up making him mutate. But even with this gear that you're allowed in this situation, I doubt that you would even do enough damage to even get to this point, considering that regular rocket launchers and grenade launchers only stun them. And the rocket launcher that actually took Mr. X out was not a regular rocket launcher, but an anti-tank rocket launcher. And while you might be able to outrun Mr. X, with Nemesis, the best way to attack him is by shooting his heart. You see, the device placed on his heart is the weakest point of his body. In Resident Evil 3, you're able to achieve this gun called the Radon, which basically lets you fire an electric pulse that would end up stunning his heart. And again, as long as William doesn't mutate, he shouldn't be too much of a threat. Same thing with Mr. X, you should be able to just outrun him, because if you let him mutate, he turns into Prime LeBron. But if you're not sold on going to Raccoon City just yet, let's see what Silent Hill is like and see if it's a better option.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't get any better here in Silent Hill. Now, we're gonna remember the conditions here. You have James' guilt. You don't have your own, but you'll be experiencing what James experienced in Silent Hill. Now, the reason why this is important is because everything around you in Silent Hill is based off of your guilt. This includes the buildings, enemies, and even some people you experience in the town. Now, remember, you're only gonna be experiencing James' guilt, meaning all the weird shit that you guys have done aren't gonna be present in the town. Now, the reason why Silent Hill is based off of your guilt is because unlike Raccoon City, it attacks you mentally instead of physically. Before I get into this, from this point forward, I want to put out a spoiler warning. If you haven't played the game yet, I recommend you do. The ending is amazing, and I'd recommend you playing it instead of hearing it from me. But this means that everything around you, including the city and the enemies, will just be constantly reminding you what you did to your wife. And also remember, just because you have James' guilt does not mean you have James' willpower. This could easily break you and stop you from moving on. Now, James' guilt isn't the only psychological attacks used in Silent Hill. The scenery itself is just completely dark. For example, Toluca Prison, the place is just a nightmare to be in. But even aside from that, Silent Hill doesn't slack when it comes to physically attacking you. For the basic enemies, you have the lion figures, the mannequins, the mandarins, and those big ass bugs called the creepers, and lastly the nurses. And I'm not gonna lie, I might go to Silent Hill just for those nurses, bro. Now, before I get into the next part, I do want to talk about the equipment that you have. The first thing you have is a basic pistol. Now, I wouldn't recommend using this in order to kill the enemies. I'd rather use it to stun them by shooting them in the knees or the head. This allows you to just shoot them and avoid them. And the second thing you have is a chainsaw. Now, if you played Silent Hill 2, you know how powerful this weapon is. It's able to just completely 4-shot to 5-shot nearly every single boss in the game. But the balancing factor for the weapon is that it's close range, meaning you can't just go around slashing everything as you'll be in constant danger of getting hit. And in this scenario, it's extremely bad because we're not allowing you to get heals. The only thing that's healing you is your body's natural immune system, meaning your best bet is to just use a chainsaw when in boss battles. Now, I'm going to be getting into the basic enemies and what they specifically do to attack you and how you should be avoiding them and attacking them. In order the weakest to the strongest, firstly have the creepers. They are just big bugs, you can just step on them, but they can over time cause a lot of harm, so it's better to just avoid them or just quickly step on them before they can do anything. Then secondly, you have the lion figures, and they actually come in 3 different variations. The first one is a basic one. They're very telegraphed, they just try to headbutt you. They're very slow too, so your best bet is just to walk around them. Then there's also the acid variation. This variation literally just spits out acid on you, meaning your best bet is to try to stun them before they can do so and try to run around them. And actually be your best bet to not kill them, because if you try to kill them, they just explode and shoot out acid everywhere. And then the third and last variation is a crawling type. Now, this could either be a normal crawler or an acid crawler, but your best bet is to just walk around them, as their sense of direction is extremely bad. Like, they'll try to attack you multiple times head on and just completely miss. Like, these guys actually suck. So it's in your best interest to just walk away, as that will completely miss you and then just completely forget about you when you get out of range. Now, the next enemy type is the mannequins. The main problem they'll pose against you is the ability to hide. So your best bet is to be constantly on the lookout, as you can just completely avoid them. And if you can't avoid them, then you can just stun them before they can attack you. The next enemy is the mandarins. You don't gotta worry too much about them, as you'll rarely be seeing them. You only be seeing them in 2 specific instances. In the first instance, you can just completely run past them in the bridge. The next instance in the labyrinth is a lot harder though. The first time you meet them in the labyrinth, you'll be in a maze and they'll just be constantly trying to attack you. So your best opportunity is to just run around them and go straight into any door you see. And then the second time in the labyrinth, you have to just outlive a timer. The easiest thing to do is to be constantly jumping over barricades, as they can't reach you when you're jumping over them. And then lastly, you have the nurses. They're very easy to get through. You can just shoot them in the knees and stun them and just run past them. Now into the bosses, you have multiple bosses like Pyramid Head, the Flesh Lips, Eddie, and Maria. The first fight is Pyramid Head. It's very simple to get through. You can try to attack him to lower the time, but I wouldn't try doing that, as he's extremely slow, so you can just walk around him and just try to outlive the time before he gets called. Next, you have the Flesh Lips. Depending if we're going to go off the original or the remake, we're going to be going off the remake. It's one big boss fight. The best thing to do is to run in and constantly hit them with the chainsaw. They take only about like 5 or 4 hits, and they take a lot of time to hit you, so you have a lot of opportunities to hit them. I completely forgot to mention this boss, but the next one is the Abstract Daddy. And if you don't have a lot of stamina, I'm not going to lie, you're probably going to die here, as most of the boss fight is just running. But once you get past that part, you can attack him multiple times, similar to the Flesh Lips, as his attacks are very slow and telegraphed, which gives you a lot of opportunities to slash him with the chainsaw. And then this next boss, Eddie, I feel like a lot of you guys are definitely gonna stop at this point. He literally has a gun, and if he shoots you around 3 times, you just die instantly. But the best thing to do here is to listen to when he clocks back his revolver and try to aim dodge him, and then run in and hit him with a chainsaw. It only takes about 3 hits to kill him too. And then next we have the Pyramid Head boss fight. Now this completely depends on you as a person, as the only way to defeat them is by feeling like you no longer need him to punish you. And then lastly we have the Maria boss fight. When she shoots her projectiles, you should try to shoot them with your pistol, and then when she comes up close, you just hit her with the chainsaw. And now that we're given a case for both Raccoon City and Silent Hill, we have to now determine which one is better to go to. And we determined that the better place to go to is Raccoon City. The reason why is because Silent Hill just attacks you on so much more levels, mentally and physically. And if you're gonna be realistic, you're gonna die very early on in both scenarios. So really, your best bet is to just end it all. And that's it for the video. As we always say, we're very open for recommendations. Whatever type of videos you want to see us make or break down, just tell us in the comments.